Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. I'm tired of all of the excuses. When Donald Trump was president, everything was his fault. Absolutely everything fell on his shoulders and he had to be held accountable for everything that happened under his administration. With Joe Biden, on the other hand, the typical leftist argument is it's never Joe Biden's fault.
So let's have a talk. Why am I paying $5 a gallon for gas?
There's inflation in China. There's inflation
Because of Biden. Because of Biden.
It's fault that there's
Yeah,
inflation.
yep.
It was a
It
world
is.
pandemic.
So you're gonna take our guns? So you're gonna take our guns?
It's a world pandemic.
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
a world
Yep. You're
inflation.
yelling at me like a
It's
little
not
girl.
everybody.
Yeah, yell at me like a little girl. No facts. I don't mean.
Oh, it's a global problem. It's a world problem. Joe Biden has nothing to do with any of it. That's what they constantly tell you. The Afghanistan withdrawal definitely wasn't Joe Biden's fault. Actually, that was Donald Trump's fault. Southern border crisis, that was Donald Trump's fault. Inflation, Donald Trump's fault. The list goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. But I'm just tired of the excuses. I mean, let's just use Joe Biden's statement. The buck is supposed to stop with him. But then why is it that anytime anything goes wrong, well, it's never his fault? Well, you know what? I'm sick of it. I'm sick of all of the excuses. And today's video is going to basically be one long rant where I'm going to make the point that, well, actually, it is his fault. Maybe not 100% his fault, but the severity of the situation is absolutely Joe Biden's fault. We've got some stuff to get into, folks, so let's roll the tape. Alright friends, so the inspiration for this video actually came from one tweet here from Defiant Els. I'm sure you guys follow them on Twitter, and if you don't, you definitely should. We have this opinion piece from Max Boot. It looks like it's from the Washington Post. Back on November 14th, 2019. Opinion: Trump's corrupted foreign policy. Coddle the dictator. Abuse the ally. Fast forward to today. Opinion: cut Biden some slack. US presidents have to deal with dictators. And of course, this is in relation to Saudi Arabia, which I want to get into. But before I get into the actual topic, the idea of cutting Biden some slack, you know, that's all you mainstream media hacks do, and that's exactly where my frustration lies. And especially on this whole Saudi Arabia thing. Cut Biden some slack. US presidents have to deal with dictators. Well, see, that's exactly the problem. Biden's not dealing with dictators well at all. Biden once again is screwing everything up. He is possibly the worst American president when it comes to diplomacy I've ever seen. You know, Donald Trump had everybody at attention. He commanded respect, he was strong, he was aggressive, but he was also friendly. Was Donald Trump in a certain way befriending dictators? I wouldn't necessarily call it befriending, but he was friendly because he knew he had to get them at the table for negotiations, and that you had to be friendly with people, especially people that you don't like and disagree with, if you want to come to an agreement, a mutual agreement, meet in the middle. The implication being, well, world peace. Joe Biden, on the other hand, frankly, is a complete moron. The guy's mentioned nuclear strikes and war, invasions, military retaliation, and the most recent event of Joe Biden shooting himself in the foot, his diplomatic failure of calling Saudi Arabia a pariah state. Now, is Saudi Arabia a pariah state? Yeah, probably. Not a bad definition at all. But as the US president or as a presidential candidate, you probably shouldn't be using those words, especially if a couple years later you're going to be stuck begging them to bail you out of a tough situation. And this is where Joe Biden proves himself to be utterly useless. If you're going to call Saudi Arabia a pariah state, and if you're going to take that strong stance against them, then you have to be willing to back it up. You have to be strong and ready to posture. But what Joe Biden does is insult his allies, postures like an absolute coward. I mean, he's basically kneeling down, begging the Saudis now, and they're looking at him like he's pathetic, like they've been insulted, as if they don't want to work for him, and they're telling him to take a hike, which is exactly what they did. Saudi Arabia is a pariah state. We shouldn't be taking them seriously at all. A couple years later, oh, please, Saudi Arabia, please help us. I'll kiss your feet, just please produce a little bit more oil. And the response is, of course, chuckling, laughing, and saying, get away from us, old man, we don't want to help you. That completely falls on Joe Biden's shoulders. That is his fault. It's not a situation of, oh, well, it probably would have been the same had Trump been in office. No, we know that it wouldn't have, because Donald Trump was fundamentally a different beast, cut from a different cloth. Joe Biden's this mix between Barack Obama and trying to pretend to be a tough guy, which just doesn't work. I mean, strategically, you can't follow the cowardly, soft appeasement strategy, the apologist strategy of the Obama era, mixed with insulting and attacks and threats threatening and pretending to be a tough guy, nobody's gonna take you seriously. And we're seeing the devastating consequence of Joe Biden's inability to negotiate or understand negotiations, understand basic diplomacy and foreign policy, and it's hurting. And once again, it's Joe Biden's fault because he's the person who put you in this position in the first place. America is not a producing economy. America's leverage comes from purchasing power. In certain cases, it's fantastic. It's not necessarily great to have a massive trade deficit, but for instance, in the case with China, Donald Trump viewed it as leverage, put tariffs on them, and he was making the Chinese dictatorship very uncomfortable, which is why they worked so hard to get Biden elected in the first place. So in certain cases, if you're importing a bunch of goods and the opposing economy or the opposing regime is depending on your country buying their goods, then you're in a position of power. But when it comes to commodities, it's a little bit different. When it comes to energy, it's a little bit different. You don't want to be relying on energy production from pariah states, as Joe Biden likes to say it, from Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, OPEC in general, just like you probably don't want your food supply to be dependent on wheat from Ukraine and other unstable nations. You probably want to be producing that domestically. Joe Biden once again doesn't get that, and that's why the current oil crisis is once again Joe Biden's fault. He supports the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, importing Russian energy into Germany and other European nations. But he axes the Keystone XL pipeline, importing Canadian energy into the United States, all the way down to Texas, and implements a ban on drilling on federal land, then attacks the oil companies for apparently price gouging the American consumer. No, again, the guy is a moron. Well, he's either evil and there's some diabolical plan, or he's just completely clueless, and the results of his decisions are economically devastating. Let's once again use Saudi Arabia as an example. Saudi Arabia, of course, doesn't rely on imported energy. They produce their own oil and their own energy. They're energy independent, which was what Donald Trump was fighting for the 4 years that he was in office. Well, take a look right over here. Saudi Arabian oil for 95 octane. In Saudi Arabia, 95 octane is $2.30 of Saudi Arabian currency for a liter of gas. That's 0.62 American dollars per liter, which is about $2.30 a gallon in American currency. They're paying half of what you're paying. I wonder why that is. Could it maybe have something to do with the concept of energy independence? Probably. I'm sure you guys get the point that I'm trying to make here. Once again, Joe Biden's fault. And once again, Democrats' fault. There's a reason why gas is so much more expensive in Democrat-run cities as opposed to Republican. Look at Texas, for instance. They actually drill, they actually produce oil, and the craziest part, they actually refine the oil, whereas the state of California has been shutting down oil refineries for decades now. And of course, they don't tax their citizens into oblivion with gas taxes and energy taxes. California does the exact opposite. Oh, but it's a global problem, they tell you. It's not Joe Biden or the Democrats' fault. Well, it's not. It's a foreign and domestic policy problem. It's an energy policy problem. It's a lack of an energy policy problem.
It is well over $3 a gallon in most of our constituencies, and we're paying that money, in my view, because we lack an energy policy.
And even Joe Biden, at least 15 years ago, was honest enough to admit that. Well, I wouldn't say honest. It's just the issue was happening under a Republican president, and that's really the only time that Democrats are really ever honest about anything, when they could use it to politically benefit themselves. And so I'm tired of the excuses. Even recently at a Nantucket fundraiser, Jill Biden pouts to donors that unforeseen events have wrecked her and Joe's plans for their time in the White House. She says Joe Biden had so many plans, but everything was derailed because of all of these unexpected things that Joe has to deal with. Now, none of them are unexpected. In fact, Donald Trump predicted all of them. In fact, before the inflation crisis, almost a year before the inflation crisis, we were talking about inflation. Joe Biden made it worse by passing trillions of dollars in spending packages during a very turbulent economic recovery, extending the stimulus era. Joe Biden crushed domestic energy production, canceled the Keystone XL, and foreign policy blunder one after another led to all of the craziness that we're seeing overseas. None of it's unexpected. Oh, well, it's just happening and it's not Joe Biden's fault. No, it is a direct result of incompetent economic policy, domestic energy policy, foreign policy, and basic diplomatic strategy. Period. Conclusion, let's go Brandon. That's what I got for you guys. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.